I want to welcome everyone to Poems from Connecticut's Four Corners, our January edition. This is officially our first anniversary, which is a really wonderful milestone to come to. And we have enough wonderful poets in the state to go another many years, so we're not going to go away. I want to welcome you all here this evening. And also say our thanks to the Ridgefield Library for hosting us. They've been such a wonderful advocate for poetry programming in this community, and also with being online, it really is, it reaches everybody who can attend. So thank you, Ridgefield Library. I'm Barb Jennis, a poet laureate emerita of Ridgefield, and I welcome you. I don't want to take up more time about me, but I want to just let you know we have a wonderful program coming up in February. On February 7th, it's going to be 3 poet couples from the state of Connecticut to kind of celebrate Valentine's Day. I know it's kind of corny, but it's a lot of fun too. So, and there was, as I was just saying before we started the meeting, there was no shortage of poet couples here in Connecticut. And I assure you, if you are a poet who is a part of a poet couple, 50% of a poet couple, I will have you on eventually. Maybe not as a couple, but we'll enjoy having you. What I'm going to do is I will give very brief introductions to each of our poets, but I'll put a longer bio in the chat so you can see the names of their publications. I just hate to blather on and on. I'd much rather have you be able to listen to the poets and their poems. And this is really, it's a very cool design because you get to see or hear and see a wonderful sampling of the quality of poetry from throughout Connecticut. So unfortunately, the poets will only read for 12 to 14 minutes, but you'll get a really, I think, a really good sampling. And again, check the chat to find out the names of their publications so you can buy their books, because that's important. We need to support our artists by either buying their books or checking them out of the library, your local library. And we have wonderful public libraries here in the state. So, okay, so we're going to start off tonight with Julia Maylor Simpson. And Julia's poetry has been published in literary journals across the country. Before retiring, she worked as a corporate communications writer and editor, as a high school English teacher, and as a newspaper editor. So if you would, please welcome Julia Maylor Simpson.
Thank you, Barb. I'll get started too. So I'll start right out with a poem called Namesake. My father said his great aunt Julia had homesteaded in the Dakotas. He met her only once when she returned home to help butcher hogs. In a blurred photo of her, the old woman perches on a park bench, looking directly at the world through steel-rimmed spectacles. Her mouth is honed to a thin, straight line, like a Dakota horizon. This is all I know about my namesake, but I can imagine how she listened to the night wind wrestle with her bedroom window, making her long for a life far from pig farms and cornfields. How she turned down the shy farmer's proposal one town over and married the roving tinker who sold sundries and sharpened knives. How she seized on her young husband's green dream to claim 160 acres in the middle of nowhere. How she fought for what must have a place in the deep wagon box, a few pieces of bone china, her cedar chest, her art books. How west of the Missouri, the road petered out to wagon tracks and shoulder-high waves of grass enveloped by endless blue skies. How they found their claim marked only by posts in the ground, and her first home looked like her mother's root cellar. How they lived in the dugout for 3 years, while first a barn and then a proper house were built. How she lost her firstborn to pneumonia during an ice storm and bore 5 more lanky boys. How her husband went south to work on the wheat harvest and never returned, so she married a Russian neighbor with 6 children. How she rarely visited home because the wind and sky owned her now. How she lingered to listen to meadowlarks sing on summer mornings. and how the pig squealed when she honed a hollow man's knives. The next one, Somewhere in the Dakotas, August 2004. I don't have a painted pony, but a rented Hyundai to speed west across the northern plains. I feel the might of galloping stallions as the speedometer races past 80, and I have to rein it in. Exit signs sing to me like sirens, and fathomless waves of fields tempt me to turn at every cryptic crossroad, to follow them to some lost world, like Catherine or Gackle or Judd. Miles later, when the sun scours every living thing in gold, including my flaming four-cylinder, it is then that Willa Cather's words slip from an open mouth of sky. And if I never arrived anywhere, it did not matter. What would be, would be. My third poem is an ekphrastic poem called Katharina Vermeer Poses for Her Husband, in response to the painting Young Woman with a Water Pitcher by Johannes Vermeer. This morning, Jan asked me to pose for him, ordering me to hold this, to touch that, as if I didn't have enough to do. First, he covered a table with red cloth and placed my jewelry case just so, slipping a blue ribbon over the edge. Then he fidgeted with a map in the wall behind me. He moved it and moved it again. Really, what need have we for maps? He turned my mother's picture ever so slightly. Again he said, touch this, hold that. To think where he dropped his muddy boots last night. Then he told me to turn, like this, turn more. He asked me to look toward the window. Then he whispered, hold still. It was early morning. A bird sang in the garden. Church bells chimed in Delft as Delft rubbed its eyes. I heard the children stir downstairs and the baby cry. The air was cool, but the sun had warmed the room. The sun. We so seldom see it here. I must get the clothes outside on the line today. And then suddenly, oh, how do I put this into words? I felt the light pour over me. Like warm water, it splashed over my bare arm, soaking the fine hairs there. And then my breast, my neck, the curls under my hoofddoek. I don't know how else to say this. I finally know why Jan loves the light more than me, more than his children, more than life. White light saturated everything, turning my drab gown to the bluest of blues. I glowed. Yes, I glowed. And just then, Jan gasped again, hold still. Yes, like that. Hold still. Birthday photo, January 1967. The girl stands outside on snowy patches, bird bone arms pinned to sides, hair waxed short, Coke bottle glasses. Today's her birthday. There will be angel food cake, speckled with colors, 10 candles sinking into buttercream icing. Behind her, an exposed oak tree scratches blackboard sky. A pig shed serves as a playhouse. A mile of frozen earth borders a ditch and a 2-lane blacktop. The birthday girl smirks, holds up 10 fingers. She is a wizard in training, charming these endless acres of constancy into forest, castle, jungle, offering to the gods a great adventure. She thinks her adventure has just begun. She skips into the farmhouse, neglecting a slipper, trailing a few magic beans. Offering up the collection. The Irish priest had pure white hair, a black cocker spaniel named Rasputin, and a glass jar of children's teeth. An odd collection amassed from years of tiny gap-smiled visitors bold enough to cross the street to his brick-faced rectory. They offered up wadded handkerchiefs, cradles for bloodied milk white kernels, that father praised and plinked into the maw. In return, he doled out holy trinkets, small plastic statues of empty-handed Mary or Jesus pointing to a ruby heart. A cursory sign of the cross over an open mouth, and the child raced back to the playground to prove how brave she'd been to go alone. When confessional boxes murmured deep, dark secrets and tongues burned down the priest's creed, his collection hummed like a choir of cherubim. Rasputin died first, then the priest in his study. His jar was flung into the alley, its bits scattered. All night, the wind sang across drifting snow. And my last poem, before I do my last poem, I just want to say thanks to Pat and Vivian and the President's Workshop for making my Sunday nights so wonderful in the past several months. It's been a joy, so thank you. And this is my last poem. It starts with the epigraph. After midnight, the moon set, and I was alone with the stars. Amelia Earhart, 1897, 1939. The tale of our town librarian. My grandmother liked to retell this story whenever she took us to the M.E. Gund Library in our town, about how back in 1938, our town librarian tacked a map of North America to the adult fiction stacks housed in the musty City Hall basement, and how, using a red pencil, Miss Lizzie, who never spoke above a whisper, plotted the course of her 18-hour Trans-World Airlines flight from Boston to LA with 3 stops in between come June. The spinster's journey would begin in our New Hampshire village and roll to a stop under palm trees in Pasadena, California, where her sister Esther worked as a hairdresser to the Hollywood stars. The town was in a tizzy. What had gotten into Miss Lizzie? Not even our banker and his wife had flown on a commercial aircraft. Why, the search for Miss Amelia Earhart was still in the news. And honestly, how could a town employee afford a round-trip ticket? Miss Lizzie was never one to chit-chat. She simply crossed out each day on her 1938 calendar until she reached June 4th. Then she passed her leather valise to a Greyhound bus driver and ascended the first flight of steps that winged her cross-country. 7 months later, after Miss Amelia had been declared lost at sea, our mayor received a letter from Miss Esther, who said Miss Lizzie had died due to a weak heart while watching waves crash onto Huntington Beach. She had gifted her bungalow and all it contained to our town. When the city elders entered Miss Lizzie's front door, they found yellowed news clippings about Miss Amelia and Lindbergh. Her prim bedroom was papered with maps marked with shiny stars next to exotic locales like Athens, Bangkok, Calcutta, and Baghdad. On her nightstand, they found a note in handsome cursive. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. Please know I feared nothing except the thought of dying without ever touching the stars. If you are reading this, it means I did just that. Tucked under the letter was a generous check with another note. Use my inheritance to build our town a real library. Her looping signature, Mary Elizabeth Gund, circle and soared across the check. And that's it. And thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I love the picture you paint of the Dakotas. The ekphrastic poem about the Vermeer painting was just the reverence for the light in that poem was just beautiful. Now, I have to ask you though, is the jar full of children's teeth a true story?
That part is true. Yes, it is. And I was the little girl that was brave enough to go over. Yes. I don't remember if I took Mary or Jesus, but
amazing. Isn't it amazing? Oh gosh.
It's true. I really don't know what happened to the teeth though. So that's
okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, so next up we have Rob Piazza. Rob earned his MFA in creative writing at Fairfield University. He teaches literature and composition at colleges and universities throughout New England. And currently, Rob serves as Poet Laureate of Litchfield. So welcome, Rob.
Let me unmute. There we go. Hey, everybody. Good to see you all. And Happy New Year to everybody. And Barb, thanks for putting this together. It's a beautiful, beautiful series. I'm going to read a group of poems, short-ish in size. And they're all roughly related to this Christmas season, this time of year. And they also have a musical theme running through them. I play classical guitar. So music's a big part of my life. The first poem is actually, the title is Home for the Holidays, and that's based on the famous Christmas carol from 1954, Perry Como. But I think I might take it in a different direction. So the first poem is titled Home for the Holidays. Let me see if I can, yeah, this is a good way to read. Home for the Holidays. I remember trekking back from college to a house where I had never lived. For our first Christmas Eve after you bastard, chose to leave with Carol, the hot new fitness trainer sporting her leopard skin leotard. The nasty card she left in the elevator devastated Mom with news of your affair. Neither Marcia nor I could acknowledge the empty seat at the dining room table. Amidst the carols, Mom too was unable to grieve this loss that felt like death. I couldn't stomach Christmas meat. Every mouthful fed my anger. Neither could we celebrate the birth of Jesus lying in his manger. Speeding down streets of North Miami Beach, past royal palms wrapped in sparkling lights, we fled to the movies at the last Oasis Mall, abandoned except for a flock of Orthodox Jews. I had never felt so utterly alone watching Platoon by Oliver Stone. Dad, why did you decide to go, leaving Marcia and me on our own? I wept through Barber's Adagio for strings in the scene when Elias gets shot, Elias who'd been left behind, raising his arms like Christ on the cross, while the character played by Charlie Sheen looks down on the war from his chopper. Afterwards, a late-night shopper pushed his cart across the vacant lot. Thank you. This second poem is very much about music, but there's also other elements to it. It's based on a string quartet by Franz Schubert. The string quartet is referred to as Death and the Maiden, which is based on a song that he wrote early in his career, and the song is based on a poem, a German poem. This string quartet was written at the end of Schubert's life, when he himself was passing away, possibly from syphilis. He was a young man at the time. So the title is Death and the Maiden. I cannot, oh, and one last thing, you can't see, the poem is written in quartets, of course, quatrains, I guess we call it. So anyway, Death and the Maiden. I cannot listen to Schubert's string quartet, the melancholy one in D minor, without thinking of you, my love, lost in a mental institution by the river. How I failed to help you when you called, how I failed to steady your trembling hand. I cannot bear to contemplate my wrongs. There was always a rupture I couldn't mend. There was always someone keeping us apart. How your husband always wrecked your heart, how you were trapped in a sexless marriage, a fertile filly hitched to a broken carriage. Music unleashes my deepest longings. I barely hear the cello's plaintive notes, yet I feel its sound in the back of my throat. I close my eyes and weep to Schubert's song. I want to touch the wound inside your breast, to wrap you in my arms and then caress your naked fears, lick your salty tears. Darling, it would have been too much. From deep inside my mind, I try to banish thoughts of having another chance with you. My soul is pierced with daggers of regret whenever I listen to Schubert's string quartet. This next poem is just a tiny bit longer. It's got a lot of religious imagery in it, and it's a tad political. Title is On Hearing a Happy Sermon After Another Failed Election. This is the morning when Jesus Christ was born. A star shone forth in Bethlehem, warning 3 wise kings to cross the desert sands, seeking a newborn baby to behold. Augustus Caesar occupied the land with Roman soldiers patrolling Jerusalem. Herod, fearing he would lose his throne, decreed a raid of every Jewish home to slaughter infants less than 3 years old. This is the story that once again is told. Throughout the weary world where brutes control arsenals of power, wealth, and fame, a troubled world where nothing much has changed. Names may differ, but the song remains the same. Despite what preachers in their sermons claim, megalomaniacs continue to play their games, using the poor as pawns to be bought and sold, worthless stones exchanged for political gain. So let the world be consumed in flames of greed, corruption, rage, and shame. I'll still believe in the birth at Bethlehem. I'll still believe in the child Mary named. I'll still believe in the verse the psalmist sang. Let Christ arrive in the manger of my soul. Let Christ redeem my anger and my pain. Arrive amidst the danger and the toil. Oh, let me love my enemies again. Change is always engendered from within the wombs of virgins who believe in love, the loins of men who sacrifice their lives. So let the Christmas miracle begin in Senate chambers as well as crowded inns, with angels, shepherds, and centurions, to sing a new song in the hearts of men, to sing a song throughout the ends of the earth, to celebrate anew his humble birth. This is a very short poem. It's just a scene or a montage, like a little quick pencil sketch. Title is Solstice in Waterbury. And if you live up in this area, you might recognize some of the imagery. So, Solstice in Waterbury. Most men are lonely souls, lugging worlds of hurt and grief, heavy sacks of trash, not like Santa with his cornucopia of toys, but garbage men with sadness in their eyes. Beside burnt-out factories, the streets outside are decked with Christmas wreaths. A layer of snow converts the Little League into landing strips for weary geese. Behind the DMV, the state police fire their rifles for target practice in trap rock quarries. A steel gray sky breaks into flurries. I have 2 last poems, relatively short. This penultimate poem is titled Transfer Station, which is our fancy word for the town dump. Where we take all our recycling and trash and all the whatnot. And this poem is based in Bethlehem, Connecticut, a little village right near where I live. And people like to get their Christmas cards stamped there, March Farms. Anyway, transfer station, Bethlehem, Connecticut. I'm about to leave for Christmas break after many months of thankless work and weeks of dreary December rain. The sky has been as colorless as ash when suddenly the dump is suffused with light. Delicious, delectable rays of amber sun. Manny, the garbage man, shovels trash into dumpsters with all the graceful might of Baryshnikov dancing the Nutcracker Suite. And Jose, in recycling, crushes cans into barrels mixed with shards of glass. Their breath evaporates in chilly air. Is this a part of God's majestic plan? Perhaps the world's ministers will dare to fight the filth that festers everywhere. The radio delivers carols to my car, untangling my knot of nagging fears. God rest ye merry gentlemen. Perhaps the miraculous birth can happen here, amidst scraps of metal and broken chairs. Maybe, can you believe it? Angels will appear. I'll conclude with this poem that refers to the upcoming holiday. Christmas, of course, is a 12-day celebration, concluding with the Feast of the Epiphany, which is usually around January 6th, which is when the three wise men arrived with their gifts. So this poem is titled Epiphany 51 and takes place up here in Northwest Connecticut. You might recognize some of the locales. So Epiphany 51. 65 mph on Route 118, January 6, 28 degrees. I'm driving home from the DMV, past mill towns and fading factories, rehashing my unholy litany of resentments and anxieties. Wrestling health insurance companies, resisting mandatory vaccines, fighting for civil liberties against the state house too much at ease with Wall Street's greed, pharmaceutical cartels, pot dispensaries, and technological monopolies spreading poverty, ignorance, and disease. Yet, deep in my soul, the poet in me longs like a caged bird to be free. When, much to my surprise, a glorious bald eagle graces my eyes, arises from beneath a bridge and flies above the Naugatuck River, which glides beside O'Malley's plumbing supplies, lifting me out of me to where my spirit thrives unfettered in the cobalt sky. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful. Those last two were just wonderful. Also, I want to comment, Rob, your rhyming, your, random here and there rhyming is just delightful. I mean, it's almost invisible to the ear, inaudible, but when you catch it, it's really fun. So thank you for that. Good poems. Good poems. Yes. Someone commented, I think it was Melissa commented about how, transfer stations are very important here in Connecticut. Right. Anyway, well, thanks again.
Thank you.
So next we have Victoria Nordlund. Victoria is the creative writing director at Rockville High School. She's also an adjunct professor at UConn and a master teaching artist at the Mark Twain House Museum. Her poetry collections, Wine Dark Sea and Binge Watching Winter on Mute, are available, I'm sure, through your independent bookseller and hopefully at your library too. So please welcome Victoria and check her full biography in the chat. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you, Barb. I'm so honored to read tonight with such wonderful company. Tonight I'm going to be reading 7 poems that all have a winter vibe as well to them, and they focus on my obsession with time and memory. So I don't know what this one says about me, but my clearest memory of the 7th grade was watching a cat decay at my bus stop. So here we go. It's called Reconstruction. Although no two organisms decompose in the same way, they all undergo the same sequential stages of decomposition. Part 1, fresh. Seventh grade me and three others wait for the school bus on a corner across the street from the Highland Park Market, in front of a house with broken windows, 4-foot weeds, a flurry of flesh flies, and a dead cat next to us on the curb. Mouth open, rigid and awkward. I have just moved here from New Jersey. Part 2, bloat. She becomes another cigarette butt in this abandoned yard. Aaron prods her with a branch. The maggots wriggle. She looks ready to rupture. I wonder how she died. Melissa tells me I'm lame. Tells me how much she hates my Jordache jeans and waist-length braids. Aaron tells me he wants me to play the prostitute in the group video project for English, because that would be hilarious. So Kathy changes the tape on her Walkman. I wish I didn't move here. Part 3, active disintegration. She looks deflated. Bones jut from her matted coat. I am still hopeful somebody will remove her. It is late November. There are beer cans near her that Aaron and Kathy kick into the street. Their book bags huddle together on the ground. Melissa's breath plumes in the feathers of her blonde hair. She shoves her hands in her rabbit fur jacket. Reminds Aaron and Kathy of that party on Friday. They chat about who they saw at the Manchester Parkade last week and how Kathy shoplifted this purse and how wicked cool some R-rated movie was. And I can't speak here or at school. It is better to be ignored. I am not wearing gloves. Part 4, advanced decay. The snow covers her carcass, but I will never forget she is under there. Part 5, dry. These remains have now been broken down to the simplest form. They are a part of my composition. 1, I watched a cat decay in 1981. 2, I still get panic attacks. 3, someone razed that house. 4, Melissa and Aaron still live in Manchester. 5, Kathy died of breast cancer 2 years ago. I found her obit when I tried to friend her on Facebook last week. Thank you. I love writing poems about my dreams. I'm a lucid dreamer. So here's one, and this one is called Snow Angel. I am barefoot in a corner of my childhood dining room. It is snowing, and I notice a few icicles forming on the chandelier. The credenza is empty. I wonder what Mom did with the china until it hits me everything is packed in my basement, along with the silver tea set and the Waterford crystal pitcher. Someone's made the table up with burlap napkins and Franciscan ware circa 1976. There is no food. There is not even the promise of food. I brace myself against a wood panel wall. So many drifts now. It's hard to see 1975 to 82 or Grandma's threadbare green chair or the hands of our grandfather clock. And no one emerges from the louvered saloon doors tonight. It's only me who was and is to come, supine in the fresh powder, flapping my limbs, waiting for wings. These next 3 poems reflect on the loss of my parents. And the first one is called Rituals. I wake up at 5:05 a.m. to pick my poodle's eyes open, lift her off the couch to pee outside. It is 12 degrees and she eats the snow. It must feel good in her old throat. I stand without socks at the slider door, guiding her up an astroturfed ramp. She eats 4 packets of Caesar beef recipe dog food and waits to be carried down to my mom's green pull-out couch in the basement. I cover her with a teal comforter, tell her to have a good day at work. She no longer asks to be pet, but I do this part anyway. I go upstairs to have my K-cup coffee, pour my Starbucks caramel creamer into the glass mug everyone knows not to take. Drink it in the dark at the kitchen table. My mom's birthday is next week. For a few years after she died, I went to the paper store and stood for way too long in the card aisle, selecting the right one. I used to call her every morning at 6:15 a.m. on my commute. I have her flip phone in my purse. Her pocketbook is next to my nightstand. She would have been 92. I had the peppermint oil I bought her in bulk on Amazon the day before she died. I apply it to my wrists now and then. We would go to Burton's for a birthday martini. She likes hers dirty. Relish the olives. We would sit at the round table by the front. I would help her walk, then walker, then wheelchair over to Chico's to buy some black blouses. The same sales lady would greet us and ask us how we were doing, and I wonder if she's still there. It's still dark when I start my car, clear just enough frost off to make it until the heat kicks in. I always come back to the same playlist now. Continuum, timed perfectly for each traffic light. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then my second grief poem. It's called Accumulation. It's -11 degrees and I'm binge watching this winter on mute. My couch has holes I have never noticed before. I can't find the remote or a comforter. I contemplate wearing mittens in my living room. The record wind chill freezes eyelashes, steals breath. Nothing is warm enough. I wonder how long frostbite takes to blister and turn black. I avoid shoveling the conversations that pile and pack and harden. The conditions are too dangerous. Not sure I have the energy to change the channel. Niagara Falls has frozen over in this cyclogenesis. Floridian iguanas have fallen out of trees, blood thick and belly up in brumation. Some gators have trapped themselves in southern swamps. Their snouts and jaws protrude just above the surface. Don't touch them, they're still alive. A block of ice has captured a school of carp and suckers mid-wave. They were still swimming when the water gave up. So it's been since 10 years since my dad has passed, and each November I always struggle to remember the exact date, and I think it's because the day isn't large enough to hold my grief. So this one is called Angling. I always catch the month early, have left November ungutted on a block of ice. But this date is a fish that escapes my hook, the number too little of a tank to hold the loss of you. Mom's 3:02 a.m. phone call that you are gone surfaces, her voice in my galaxy. She is no longer on any line. The day before you pass, you see an upside-down tree on the ceiling. Its roots, you say, are flowing through several constellations. A body of water emerges, and you want to swim in its branches. You hope I'm not missing this. Tell me I look like an angel as I hold a smoothie to your lips, as you spit out the lure. Thank you. So I do a lot of pop culture poems, so I'm gonna, with my second to last one is a poem I wrote after Matthew Perry died last month. And the last line is one of the episodes of Friends. Could I be any more? Matthew Perry died yesterday at 54. This hit me hard, maybe because I'm 54 too. And John Ritter was 54 when his heart gave out. He was my first crush. I loved Three's Company, had his picture hanging in my 9th grade locker. I convinced myself 2003 is recent history, but it's 2 decades back. And Susie Ann Summer died this week too. At least she got to be 76. I have frozen Jack and Chrissy and Janet at 22. I wonder how Joyce DeWitt feels to be the only one left. And the Ropers both died in 1988, and they were both 54 in the pilot. And I was only a decade old, a quarter century when Friends began, and pregnant with my son who turns 29 this January. I hated being 29 because I felt so old. Friends went on for a decade more. They were 35 when it ended. It was a year after Ritter died. Jen was still with Brad. The twins who played Ross and Rachel's baby are now 21. I had 3 kids by 2004. I stopped watching Friends around 2002. May have watched the finale, had no interest in the reruns. It didn't age well. Tuned into the reunion last year, amazed they somehow kept the whole set intact. I wonder what they did with the Three's Company couch Jack tripped over every Tuesday at 9. Harry looked so old. The girls held up well. I am now a ma'am wherever I go. My daughter is getting married next month. She is 26. At 26, I was 6 months pregnant with her, and Friends aired on Thursdays during the Moz class, and we had to videotape season 3. And I remember we missed the one where no one's ready. Thank you. I have one more, and I thought I would actually end with something hopeful, and it's actually a love poem. Wow. All right. It's called The Cold Earth Slept Below, and it's after Percy Bysshe Shelley. The night sheds slowly. The sluggish moon disappears with no promises. The birds perch somewhere songless on bare branches with roots bound by frost that nestles in the cracks. January's bitter breath rises now to touch the tips of your lips. I watch you rest. I am still lost in the blackened hedges of a sleepless season. Our bodies buried in the drifts of the down comforter. Your exhalation a gentle current, an offering of warmth. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. What a diversity of poems, from love poems to pop culture poems. The one in particular, Accumulation, where you create a metaphor for grief with, all that deep freeze we went through, was just really very, very, very beautiful. So thank you. Thank you for your poems. All right. Okay, so next we have Ralph Nazareth. Ralph is a poet, teacher, and publisher who taught for 40 years at SUNY Stony, Brook, and Purchase. He's the author of 4 poetry collections and is the managing editor of Yuganta Press. And read his full bio. He's got a very intriguing bio. So welcome, Ralph.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Barb, for inviting me. It's an honor to represent Southwest Connecticut. I also want to thank Melissa, my friend Melissa Slattery, for telling Barb about Ralph, who was hiding out in Stamford. I've met with poets for about 20 years at a little diner called Curly's Diner in Stamford. And there is a person there, the proprietress, whose name is Eleni. So my first poem is called Questions for Eleni. She is a woman with a very big heart and very strong ideas. You dare not argue with her, but you can only ask her questions. So here's my first poem. Questions for Eleni. What's this they tell me about the light of Greece? Why does your igneous rock turn to marble and alabaster? What can you tell me about the birds of your land? Do they all have the gift of prophecy? The lambs and goats, sheep and bulls, do they turn into lovers in spring? Does their blood turn into wine? And what about your little mosses, ivy, and other creepers? Do they speak of things your philosophers know nothing of? What can you tell me about your gods? Why would I care? Except how can I not feel I'm also Leda splayed on the ground, my heart the opening for their shuddering torsos? Would you believe if I told you I am the secret lover of Lysistrata, the one who whispered into a ear the secret of stopping men's madness? Tell me, do young men in Greece sleep with their mothers? Is this why mothers tear their sons limb from limb while they're still tender and lovely? Do fathers in Greece eat their own sons in their blindness? And what about sons and their simmering hatred? Are there more important things for me to know about your land, of the blue glass mirror and the wine-dark sea? Please open the box and let me in on the secrets. Or would you rather not be Pandora? I am more simple than you think I am. I am more frightened than I let on. I am more unknowing than mitochondria. Like you, I also want to speak to simple people in the marketplace. I also dream of hills that return my song to me, the sisters who stand entwined against the wind. I know them well. I am a baby crawling in a room full of things, looking for a key, a hammer, a pen. They are nowhere to be found amid the rubble of the world. So I put my fists in my mouth and eat my heart out. I know my India, no better than I know your Greece. Ignorance is my name, and my belly's full of desire. I hope that my friends Linda Sorensen and Janet Krause are in this group somewhere. They mean a lot to me. And I'm partly dedicating this reading to them. History. He could not believe I didn't know Appomattox. I was shocked he hadn't heard of Kalinga. Between the two of us, a blindness spanning millennia, two battlefields, two turning points in history. We were ignorant of the blood on the other's hands and wondered how the world could have kept on turning. Well, we are all living through very difficult times. And so I think it's appropriate to remind ourselves of those famous lines by Bertolt Brecht. I'm sure you know them. In the dark times, will there also be singing? Yes, there will also be singing about the dark times. So this song is called Desert Song. It's sort of an offering to Suhair Hamad, who is a Palestinian singer and performer. All day on the deck under the budding sky, I think of Suhair Hamad. Ooh, how she hip-hops and yo-yos this generation. No pain, no gain, a beauty of the desert, swaying palms and torso, eyes and lips and eyes and hips, a heart to match. And the old black man with the wrinkled brow, his golden sack slumbering in his arms, a child, dreaming of the swollen nipple Mama Jazz will bear for him to suck and blow the juice of love. You close your eyes, hanging on to what you know so well. You know I swell with jealousy to see the man throw his stake and spring away to go back to his love, and in her blazing arms find the fire sleeping in the blue notes of the black man, flaring in the darker night of my strumpet self. Where are the olive groves we loved so deep? Where are our homes? This dug-up blasted earth was once saved for no one's rest and bones but ours. She sings of us so young, so fair. She sings all hours, her tongue on fire. Her lips are black, the night's her lover. Long his arms unite, untied, and feels and farms as long, her goats and kids are long, too long under others' heels. It won't do to hug your sack so lax in the cool blue labyrinth. Let me bear the scar on my breast. Rest your finger, love, here on the star of my soul. With your finger, love, trace the shape of my land. Slow, slow down the wadi, up the rise along the next swirling storm of hair. Love, there's no more time to lose, for all we love may soon be lost for good. Something a little softer, maybe. A notable fact about my life is that I spent about 10 years raising my 3 kids. So I took off from teaching and stayed home. And my kids offered me, there was a lot of mischief, but they offered me many ideas for poems. Here's one of them. Losing to the Cat. When she was 7 or 8, there were days when she could not buy a playmate for love. Brother'd be locked in Legoland, and little sister lost in books, and the cabal of neighborhood kids would be squealing Marco Polo in pools behind tall stockades. Retreating into a room, she'd set her gold and white tabby, a lion in looks but boneless light, facing her on the other side of the Monopoly board, and deal. She'd roll the dice for the cat, go by the book for a move or two, then afraid she'd lose her buddy to boredom or to feline pique, she'd bend the rules to suit her mate and not drive hard bargains. She'd skip the rent, enter odd arrangements, grant amnesties on mortgages and liquidations, and let the cat draw without limit on the bonus of the treasure chest. Playmates are still hard to find, especially those who would rather lose than richly saunter around the board alone. The cat's long gone and buried in the compost beside the old oak. She was a friend, my daughter sighs. But just imagine losing to a cat. I think my time is probably up. Let me read to you one last poem, approaching, as I think Rob reminded us of Epiphany. I usually like to think of myself as one of those 3 kings that came from India. It's a legend, but we like to think that we had something to do with the nativity scene. I was very young when the creche, the nativity scene was put together as part of a small Catholic community and a small Christian community in India. It's only about 2% of the total population. So this is my last poem. Thank you all for this wonderful opportunity. Outlook for peace at last count. At first, we had one each of the principles, a modest number of sheep and shepherds, and true to tradition, just 3 kings. With the years, some pieces were lost for good. Others were found in the wrong seasons. Missing heads, burnished turbans, censers, crooks and humps, eyes blank to smears, tarnished tempera peeling off its sooty joints with melted wax, had mended fractures, fusing tops to torsos, wings to backs, child to radiant spill of hay. We had saved and nurtured them, outright added a few. The stock had grown steadily, diversified. Clay, terracotta, plastic, indestructible rubber. It was now a multi-matter conglomerate. A surplus of shepherds in every shade of wonder, shock, and mindlessness. A multitude of sheep, choking the paths and bridges, crunching the cracked glass streams. A wattle of glazed white manna matting the entire countryside. Enough long-tailed stars to mislead 3 times 3 kings, dragging the eastern exodus. 4 infants bursting out of the straw. 2 virgins deepening the mystery. 2 foster fathers confusing the issue. And dimming our recessed bank of lights, commissions of angels upholding one heavy prospect for a lasting peace. Thank you.
Wow. Wonderful. Oh, just wonderful. Between the questions for Elena, which were so thought-provoking, and then the humor, but also the poignancy of losing to the cat. Yeah, the line in there about I was something about playmates are still hard to find, especially those who'd rather lose than strut around the board wealthy. That was just a great line. I mean, and your sonics, Ralph, are just wonderful. So thank you. You're getting a lot of comments in the chat, so please be sure to check. All right, well, I don't want tonight to end, but we have another wonderful poet to share. Julia M. Paul is the author of 2 full-length collections and a chapbook. Her poems are widely published, including in the 2023 Pushcart Prize. I'm not really good with these. The most recent, one of the most recent anthologies. It has Roman numerals, and I'm just not even going to try. I was an English teacher. Anyway, Julia leads the Riverwood Poetry Series and is an elder law attorney. So please welcome Julia Paul. Hi, Julia.
Hi, and thank you, Barb, for inviting me and for allowing me to share the stage with these poets who have been so inspirational tonight. It's been wonderful. The work I'm going to share tonight derives mostly from my forthcoming publication, full-length publication. It's called Table with Burning Candle, and its subject matter is mainly my son's struggle with opioid addiction and ultimately his death by overdose. I recognize this is the beginning of a new year, which symbolizes hope and great expectations, but I'd like to offer my portion of the reading for those who may be struggling with their burdens a little bit. So the first poem is called Cycles. Blue moon, twice this month to detox. Twice he walks away. Twice a second chance. Supermoon, obsession, compulsion, obsession, compulsion, obsession, compulsion. Harvest moon, fast track bus to Hartford. The cravings consume him. The feast at the altar waits. Blood moon, the needle can't find a proper vein. A bloody mess when he shoots up. Wolf moon, he paces like an animal, tears at the scabs on his hands, turns off the light he can no longer bear. The next poem is called Doorbell, 5 a.m. When your child dies, you pack and unpack his things. You read what he was reading, but avoid anything with his signature, inscrutable as rubble after a house fire. Even when you're outside, you remain inside. Dirt is jewelry worn under the nails of those with hope enough to plant seeds in spring. You hold the harvest of love in your arms until one day he wriggles free. Time presses against a doorbell. Time is tricky math. Things don't always happen in the right order. Things don't always happen in the right order. Brutal as the shape of a coffin, this band-aid of passing time. Brutal is the doorbell at 5 a.m. Brutal is uncontrolled re-entry. They say it's best when falling from a great height to hold one's legs together and land on bended knees. This next poem is the one that appears in the Pushcart Prize anthology. It was originally published by in the journal Here, which comes from Eastern Connecticut State University. So shout out to that journal. It publishes some amazing work. The poem is called Dear Coroner, How Could You Know? That he was articulate and very, very funny. That he once knew all the state names in alphabetical order, won a prize for metalsmithing in high school, loved reggae, Volkswagens, quesadillas with gorgonzola, snowboarding, reading Cormac McCarthy, and that he loved how light fell through stained glass windows, his brothers, swing sets in winter, insects caught in amber, blank canvases, the geometry of a pieced together bowl, how sun sparked orange like matchsticks on concrete, that he loved to dawdle like he had time in his pocket, and believed in ghosts, in not killing spiders, and forgave the haters, the suits and shoppers who brushed past him, muttering under their breath, but loud enough for him to hear, "Fuck off, junkie." This next poem came from a dream where my son spoke to me. It's called A Night of Now. "I'm not dead," my dead son said. "I've just been away for a few months with the one I love." "We thought you were dead," I said to my son as I ran my hands over his face like the blind do when they want to know. It was not cold and stiff. "We had your funeral. Did you go?" "Yes, and it was lovely, really touching," he said as he was leaving, but not out the door. This time he knew where he was going. That familiar stride, his stride. I could recognize it from a mile away, like he was walking on air. "Mr. Cocky," I said, instead of goodbye. This next poem is called Survival. "The lake is nervous this morning, even though no one's drowned since 2015. With plans for a Saturday night, they were teens on thin ice. 'You're skating on thin ice,' Mother used to say. From a TV show, I learned the best way to navigate thin ice is flat on your belly. Life's a gathering of survival tools, is it not? You never know when the carabiner might fail or the bear will startle in the path. My father lived past 100 because he knew how to survive everything but time. These squirrels are preparing for winter, tossing acorns from treetops. You could be fooled into thinking it's raining. Someone's always prepared for the weather. An umbrella in the trunk, poncho in the pocket. Another takes her chances. Someone is digging for worms. Someone writes a note. Another pays attention to distant thunder. And someone else comforts a friend. This too shall pass, she says, echoing her own mother. Leaves released by the breeze pirouette into the lake. Someone thinks of a soul going out, the last breath, a screen door blowing open. Someone else learns to float. This next poem is called On Buying a Paddleboard After the Death of My Son. The salesman who said February's the best time to buy a paddleboard had a nice smile and was around my son's age. I wanted to hug him for his mother, who was probably not at that moment thinking how lovely he is. I had paddleboarded once on Cochiti Lake. It was like floating on sunlight. There were no sharp edges. The lake was boundless. The lake was gentle. It was the life I longed for. It was the life I longed for my son. I want to focus on the distance while slipping past it. I want my balance back. I want to lift my eyes to the sky without going under. I want to float on bended knees. I want to stand on my own 2 feet. If only the wind would take me away. When I unclench my fist, the wind will take him away. When I fall, the water will release me over and over. I want to be brave enough to float again. So I have one more poem, and it's not from the book. Just gives you an idea of where I am now. It's called Self-Portrait at 70-ish. Like the flamingo, I am the color of what I ingest. I have consumed the dank basement. My face is graffiti on an overpass. Do not accuse me of cutting in line. I was born in the middle of 9 children. Do not confuse me with the moth at the porch light. I am the porch light. I lack the romance of a candle, but without me, who can see the keyhole at night? I'd eat a cloud if my spoon were long enough. I drank a lake until my belly became fishbowl. Someone once said that I was strong. They saw me lift myself up. The doctor's chart said it's all in my head. The average head weighs 11 pounds, whether thoughtful or thoughtless. I sometimes weigh what I'm about to say. We all know that holding back can lead to a sour stomach or facial tics. Did you know that it would take 100 nuclear warheads to cause nuclear winter? This is my best icebreaker question for any gathering where I'm underdressed. My ex bragged he was a person people either liked or hated. That should have been a red flag right there. Every so often, I revise my memoir. For a long time, I wore a horsehair shirt to remind me of my grief. Every so often, I wear the sleeveless cocktail dress of a newscaster. In another version, I am the fringed, bell-bottomed gazelle of my youth. Lately, I hear my mother's whisper from the lip of the horizon. I used to soak her feet in ocean water warmed on the stove before I cut her toenails. I wanted to be a good daughter. I wanted to be a good mother. I am frayed by wind like prayer flags of good intentions. My body is a question mark. All my cells are lightning bugs. All my cells have learned their biology from fire. Every page I turn to in the dictionary is a second chance. The right word is stuck between my teeth. I am with myself in spirit. Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here tonight.
Yes. Wow. I agree. Thank you, everyone. But also, Julie, just such heart-wrenching poems. Wow. I look forward. I will definitely need to get a copy of Table with Burning Candle. So I know I spoke with Vivian Shipley recently. She said she'd had lunch with you, and I think she mentioned how our poems have a lot in common. So it's yeah, I love who you are becoming, the fact that you are the porch light. So anyway, there's a lot of power in that. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being with us this evening. Please join us next month. As I mentioned, it's going to be poet couples. I should have mentioned the names as well. We're going to have Denise Abercrombie and Jonathan Anderson, Margot Schilp, and Jeff Mock. And then also Laura Peterson and Van Hartman will be with us. So join us on February 7th. And thank you. I know we're not able to communicate with the Ridgefield Library right now, but thank you, Ridgefield Library, for hosting us. And everyone, thank you for coming. And poets, thank you for an amazing evening. So take care, everyone.
Thank you, Barb.
Oh, thanks.